panel, so if everybody could take their seats. Can you take your seats, please? We're about ready to begin. Okay, we're about ready to begin. You're sitting at the front, dear. First. If any of you are using social media, okay, maybe I should not stay too close to the microphone. Welcome back. Welcome back. When Michel Audin visited us a few years ago, he said from the amount of noise in the room that we must be Mediterranean. So I'm guessing that you're Mediterranean too. I'd just like to make one tiny technical announcement in the meantime. So if any of you are using social media and tweeting about the conference or writing something about the conference on Facebook, there's a hashtag here on the screen. It would be wonderful if you could use it so that people who are following and are not with us can use it. So it's hashtag HRIC Europe 2015. It's kind of long, but it's very helpful. You can also tag, if you like, you can tag Roda. The handle is at Udruga Roda, UDRUGA. Or you can also put the handle of Human Rights in Childbirth, which is Birth Human Right.
Hey. Hello, everyone. My name is Linda Rosik. I'm from Hungary. I'm a clinical psychologist. And together with my colleagues, we have been running groups for pregnant moms and postpartum moms as soon as they happy to get out of their homes. And obviously, these groups always involves preparations for birth and sharing their birth experiences and dealing with it. So my work is listening to women tell their stories and more importantly, to make that happen, make that possible to happen. So this coming panel is about research and advocacy efforts and how this helps to secure human rights in childbirth. So I was thinking about how this really matters to women. Why is it helping women? And I think I have a personal story that can prove why this is very important. And as I was listening to Wilma in the previous panel, her birth story that sounded painfully familiar, not in my experience, but in general. I was thinking that, wow, I was lucky I got my portion of abuse before my birth experiences, which is not a very good conclusion to come to, but that's how I felt in that moment. So about 5 or 6 years ago, I was going through an IVF procedure to help conceive our first child. That successfully happened. And so I had a minor operation, and I was still lying on the operating table, legs wide apart, half naked, uncovered, with no one else in the room but me and my doctor. And with a weird idea, he thought to express his feelings of support by kissing me on the face. On the cheeks only, but still. So if you picture that situation, and also, the table was quite high, so in order to do that, he kind of had to lie on top of me. And obviously, I was vulnerable and completely powerless or speechless to stop him or do anything. So, but that's not surprising, right? So I wasn't quite at my best to stand up for myself. But what really surprised me is that it took me months to realize that what happened there was wrong. In fact, women were joking about, oh, he was so nice to kiss, give that little kiss, wasn't he? I was like, I'm not sure. Yeah, I guess. But obviously, that's not that's not how I felt. I didn't feel respected, or I don't think I can explain more about it. So, but the important part of this story is that what made me help to realize that what happened was wrong, and I felt anger and I felt disrespected, came from a reaction of another woman when I was telling her my story months later, and she looked at me completely shocked, eyes wide open, jaws dropped, and just staring at me. And that's the moment I realized that it was bad. Even though I felt that way, but I didn't let that be so conscious or be straightforward about it. So this is why I think that all these stories and facts are really important to come to the surface, because this is what helps women to relate to their own experiences and to realize what's going on. Okay, so our first speaker is Miglena Delcheva, an activist at Rodilnica, Bulgaria, and she is one of the women who created Bulgaria's first and only NGO supporting women's rights in childbirth. So, this one. And then click the bottom. Left, right. That one. Okay. How do I change slide? Left, right. You have a pointer too. If you press the red button, you can point. Left and right.
Okay. Now here's the question: Is violence acceptable? And I'm sure the answer in this room will be totally not. But if the same question is asked to the Bulgarian society, the answer will be, well, it depends. So and people will tell you that in many cases violence is totally acceptable, and we actually learned this the hard way. In the organization in Rodilnica, where there are only volunteers working, all of us had an understanding about that violence is not acceptable in childbirth. But this was not what the society and the medical professionals understood. And so we had our first campaign provoked by a very severe case of disrespect and physical violence that happened to a young mother in 2009. And we said no to violence. It was a demonstration in front of a hospital. There were media reports. There was a show on the TV with participants in this case, with the midwives invited to speak, and other women that gave birth in the same hospital with the same providers who also spoke. And then we actually saw that the society did not respond the way we hoped they will. We actually anticipated they will. So we decided we will go slightly in a different way. We would try to educate women about their rights and the rights they can request from their providers, the rights that exist in our laws. So our next campaign was informed consent, and it basically invited women to check what this was, whether they really had the right to say yes or no to intervention or to practices proposed to them. And I would say there was a little bit more support for that, and we managed to change the way informed consent forms looked in some hospitals. Then we moved to first contact, the initiative to not separate mothers and babies at birth. And I think over the years that followed, we really made a point here, and there was quite a lot of improvement, at least in hospitals, big hospitals in Sofia, where one-fourth to one-third of Bulgaria's babies are born. Uh, the there is the first contact. Baby is usually put on the mother's this day, but it was not so several years ago. Although this first contact is not the way it should be, they are not left together for at least 1 hour. They are usually separated in a few minutes and rejoin it in a couple of hours, depending on the birth, whether it was a cesarean or a vaginal birth. Then the right to undisturbed birth, together with other organizations in Bulgaria supporting normal birth. And we thought, okay, probably probably the way to secure women's rights and to reduce violence was to work together with the midwives and to promote the midwifery model in Bulgaria. This was something unknown, unheard of. If you ask today someone on the street in Bulgaria, what is a midwife? The answer would probably be, this is a nurse in the maternity and OB-GYN ward. So there is very little understanding of the roles of midwives in Bulgaria, and we try to promote the midwifery model as a way to reduce violence. And in 2013, we actually came with the idea of putting a show, a slideshow, and showing women and the society what is violence and asking them whether it is acceptable. So we did it totally on, as we say, pure muscle power. It means no financing, nothing else, but our ideas, our free time, and the efforts we were willing to dedicate. I'm sure you know this picture, you've seen it. It's the entire show, the pictures were taken by one of our members. We did this campaign, we did the show following a model that was already existing. I think it was an American one, but we made it local. We just tackled the local problems, and we asked questions, like the questions that would usually receive no, like, is it okay to touch a woman if she doesn't want to be touched? And the answer is no. If you don't know the context, the answer would usually be no. Is it okay to insert something in a woman's vagina without asking her? And people would be shocked, of course, no. But then, as the show slightly moves to birth, then usually the answers are different, and we just wanted to underline that it is not different, as still women have right dignity, still women have right to preserve their body and to have the right to say what can happen to their bodies. We started to receive comments under the video and on our Facebook page, and women started to tell their stories of violence. We kind of expected this, but it was overwhelming. There were many and many responses. Some descriptions were shocking. I will just show you. So we invited women to take pictures and tell us in pictures what was wrong. And here are just some of this description. Shall I wash her first? No, I'll suture her now, as the second half time is about to start. You can clean her up after I finish. A young female doctor with long crimson-colored nails gave me no hope for my desired natural birth. What is your medical background? You cannot tell me how to do births. Birth does not happen the way you want it anywhere. Today, I'm the one deciding on births here. Shut up, stop crying. I will be fired if they know what I'm doing. The midwife who decided she wanted to get home early for Good Friday, while she had her entire hand in me in an attempt to help me, after having waiting for me to give birth for 2 hours. This woman describes the manual dilation of the cervix. We did receive. Sorry, the time is up. Oh, I'm so sorry. So yeah, I will be very quick. So we said, okay, this cannot stay on internet only. We need to make the institutions know. So we invited women to send their stories to the Ministry of Healthcare, and about 40 women did so. Many people saw the campaign. There were a lot of responses on Facebook. Unfortunately, the Ministry of Healthcare initially gave us this response through the newspapers, and the short answer was, we cannot just trust anything that's on the internet. Luckily, okay, or it's we had the front page of a big newspaper in Bulgaria, and it took one of the words or one of the sentences that women taught us. It's okay. You have to give birth very fast because the second half time is about to start. Sorry. Well, I think because the time is up, I won't be able to finish. Just to tell you that there was a second round, a second letter to the Ministry of Healthcare, and this time the ministry kind of heard us after publications in the press again. This is an interview of Elena and another volunteer of the organization. The titles are very provocative. The pictures you can see are very provocative, but it actually made this society move again, and there were many comments again. And this time the Ministry of Healthcare gave us an official reply saying, okay, you will have to prove that violence is happening, but we might consider it if you are able to prove. This was the short answer. Things are moving kind of slowly. Thank you.
I keep on working. Okay. So thank you, Milena. And our next speaker is Daniela Drandic, Head of Reproductive Rights Program RODA in Croatia. Thank you.
I had the pleasure of having a coffee with Milena in Prague at the end of November at a conference. Okay, I'll do it. And it was a very interesting coffee because she told me about what they were doing in Bulgaria. And in Roda, we had the tradition marking the Day Against Violence Against Women, November 25th, with the discussion of obstetric violence. So I thought to myself, well, you know, this would be a good idea. Perhaps we can do this for the 16 days of activism. It worked in Bulgaria, it might work in Croatia. When I came home, my colleague said, haha, you're going to have to call all your friends and tell them to send their stories because no Croatian woman will want to share her story. They were wrong, I'm happy to say. We got over 500 stories in 16 days. We got the cover of every national newspaper. There was not a respectable news program that I was not on in those 16 days. By the end of January, I think I was on every channel numerous times. I was on every radio station, and we had a meeting at the Ministry of Health. So what I'd like to tell you is just some of the stories. They're very similar to the ones in Bulgaria. So they laughed at me and they told me I was a coward, while for hours with contractions, I was asking them to call my husband, even though he had taken the course to allow him to be with me. I would like to kindly request doctors to stop jumping on women's stomachs and breaking their ribs. They asked me why I came to give birth in a hospital if I didn't want interventions. They broke my waters without asking. They pulled my child out violently while it was still okay. They ruptured my cervix. They gave my child an enormous bruise on his head and from the vacuum. They told my husband to work on me for next time so that I would listen to them more. It took me 4 years to even begin thinking about having another child, and now it's too late. What happened afterwards is we had a meeting at the Ministry of Health after this enormous media attention that we got, And we came up with 4 plans of action of things that we would do. The first one was in a team of inspections of people that would go into inspect all the maternity hospitals to see what the situation was. We're expecting their report in a few weeks. The report will be an absolute disaster. They're going to say everything is wonderful. We have low maternal mortality. We have low perinatal mortality, and everything is great. That's what we expect, and pretty much, we're almost 100% that that's what's going to happen. And at that point, we're going to start working further. But what's very interesting is, aside from our campaign in Croatia, from this coffee in Prague that was so innocent, many organizations from the former Yugoslavia, which for those of you that don't know, have very similar languages to us and have a very similar health system, came together. And for International Women's Day, we decided to have a campaign that we called Sloboda Rađanju, which is essentially translated loosely freedom for birth. We had to pick something that was okay and translatable into all our language standards. There were more than 10 organizations in 5 countries, of which Bosnia is kind of special because they have all kinds of different sections. So maybe we could say that there were more than 5 countries. And over 8 days before International Women's Day, we had a plan of action of different activities that would happen in every country. We had online surveys about maternity practices, and over 4,000 respondents responded in Croatia alone. What was very interesting is that the results throughout the former Yugoslavia and women's experiences and women's perceptions were extremely similar. So despite the fact that we haven't been in the same country for the last 20 years, it seems that our systems haven't changed at all. Things that are normal, episiotomies, crystallar or fundal pressure, not allowing the woman to have anybody with her at the birth, saying things, discriminating things to the women, not giving women what they want, not telling them what's happening, pulling out what the Americans call the dead baby card. Whatever you say, your baby will die. Well, I mean, what woman, 99% of women are going to do whatever somebody says if you pull that on them. What we also had were protests, which we didn't call protests. We called them walks for freedom for birth. And we had them in 3 cities. We had them in Zagreb, Banja Luka, which is the Serbian part of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and Sarajevo. There was a huge event planned in Belgrade, but it was raining, so they stayed home. We got a lot of media coverage. This was our protest in Zagreb. When I see these pictures, it really does bring tears to my eyes, because these are young women. These are our freshest members who have tiny babies, who were carrying small A3 pieces of paper with results from our campaign. This one on the left says, birth in a Croatian maternity hospital is the best form of contraception. The one in the middle says, every second woman has the crystallar, and this is dangerous for the mother and the baby. And the one on the far right says, in Croatia, 60% of women get an episiotomy during birth. In Denmark, that percentage is 4%. These are media photos. So these are photos that we got from the media. These are photographs from Banja Luka, which is in Bosnia. So what I'd like you to take home from this is something, an innocent coffee between 2 women who are just, talking about what they did can have enormous ramifications. If I had known, that fateful day in November, that from this coffee we would have a huge Balkan-wide event. And what's most important is Roda has been working in Croatia for a large number of years. So problems and issues in pregnancy and birth are not so taboo anymore to talk about. But in these other countries, these are taboo issues that are not discussed. We were on regional television. They were in Serbia and in Bosnia. There was not a television channel that did not feature these stories. So we took an issue that was a women's issue that was not discussed. What happens in the maternity ward if you leave alive is not discussed, became an issue that's put on the table. And there are ministries of health throughout the region that are discussing it. So, 2 volunteers having coffee. Lots of things can happen. Thank you.
Thank you. So our next speaker is Katharina Hartmann, activist and coordinator for human rights in childbirth in Germany, and as I understand, throughout Italy as well.
I used to be in Italy, no more.
But Daniela, I need your help. I don't seem to be.
Sorry, you have to go
It
to
doesn't. Oh, okay. Perfect. Thank you.
There you go.
There's your.
Okay, so I need the microphone. The microphone is my. Yeah, he's going to take him. I don't know if that works. We can try. We can try. We've got long hair. Yeah, you can pull my hair. I won't say anything. Okay, so we need to do this quickly before baby cries. So I'm here to present the Roses Revolution to you, which is kind of another way of what Miglena and Daniela just presented. It's a grassroots initiative to give women a voice and raise awareness against obstetric violence. Okay, I need this one. So this is the logo, and this is what it is all about. It's about regaining dignity for the women who suffered from obstetric violence. And the claim is, name it, each woman is a rose against obstetric violence. And it basically consists of the simple act of putting down a pink rose in front of the door of the hospital or labor ward or birthing center or wherever, behind which the woman experienced obstetric violence. It doesn't necessarily have to be a real rose. Some women prefer to put down a paper rose as well. And the event takes place on November 25th, which is the International Day of against violence against women. And I brought the idea home from the last Human Rights and Childbirth Conference in Belgium in Blankenberge, where Jesusa, I hope to get her last name right. Let's read this off. Her last name is, thank you. Can you say that? Recoy. Okay, let's just say with Jesusa Recoy. And I brought this home to Germany, and I came home on November the 6th, and I basically had 2 weeks to pull it off. So what I basically did was just put up a Facebook page, and the response was enormous for only 2 days. This is the call for action. This is how it actually worked. This is the call for action that we posted on Facebook, that we sent over the internet, which we also prepared as a little leaflet for women to print home at home and pass out in their mother-baby classes wherever they wanted to. And it reads, on November 25th, bring a pink rose to the door behind which you experienced the worst. Be it the door to the labor ward, the hallway, or the hospital entrance hall. Please go only as far as feels right for you. If you like, put a short letter or your birth story next to your rose. Important. In order to gain as much publicity as possible, please take a picture of your rose and post it on our Facebook page. If you wish to remain anonymous, please send the photo to us via private message and we will post it for you. Please use the hashtag RoseRef on Facebook and Twitter. And this is what it looked like in 2013. This is a picture that was sent to us by a woman from a group of women from a hospital in Berlin. So in 2013, it was really all done in a hurry. There were no press releases. There was no nothing. I didn't prepare anything. I came home from Blankenberge and pulled this Facebook page together, but the response was such that it encouraged me to keep going, because women started to send their birth stories in, which I had never asked for. People started to change their Facebook profile pictures to the rose, and it encouraged me to put it on last year again. So who is it aimed at? We have to distinguish between two events. The one is the Facebook event, and this is primarily an exclusive place of expression for the women. It's meant to be there for the women. And only secondarily, it's also a public proof that obstetric violence exists. Then the real life event is the fact that a woman or a group of women walk to the hospital or to their place of birth and put down the rose. And this, for the women, is primarily an act of bravery and self-affirmation. And only secondarily, it's an indicator for the caregivers that something in their care went wrong. This is some impressions from the 2014 Roses Revolution. This is a hospital in Fürth, where a large group of women who didn't know each other beforehand took an appointment via Facebook and went there together to put their roses and their letters down. There's another group action. This is a hospital in Cologne where women went together. But some people also went alone. Or this is a letter to the hospital, the university hospital in Bonn, and the lady couldn't face actually going there, so she sent a letter. This is a single act as well. And as you can see from this picture, for some women it was quite a hit-and-run situation. The woman who sent in this picture suffered a non-consented cesarean section, and she was very, very proud of herself, of being able to go there that day. But she trembled. She had signs of post-traumatic stress disorder. This woman was in psychotherapy for almost 2 years after the birth, and she was so proud of herself that she could actually face going there. But as you can tell from the picture, she was shaking, and she didn't really took the time to take the picture, because she said that she felt like a criminal. And that is actually a phrase that a lot of other women confirmed. They felt like criminals, like being, caught in the act of doing something wrong. So why does it work? Why is there such a big impact or such a big audience for it? I think the Facebook event works because women realize they're not alone, and they're not insane, and they're right in feeling what they are feeling. It has a low threshold. It's within everyone's reach. It's only a click away. It's discreet. It can be anonymous if people choose to contact us via private message and we post it for them. And it provides a healing space and an occasion to deal with one's memories, because very often women feel that something is wrong, but they don't have an occasion to deal with it. But now they know the next 25th of November will be there, and I will be there to tell them again and again and again. And I will tell my neighbors and my niece and my cousin, the next 25th of November will come and we can put your rose down as well. So it also creates a sense of companionship and belonging. The real life event is a powerful imagery, really, because it gives women their dignity back. They symbolize the woman, the rose. I am a rose, I'm worthy, and if you didn't honor me, I honor myself by putting down a rose for myself. So it's an aesthetic act with its own beauty and dignity. It's an act of bravery, and this act of bravery is actually acknowledged by the others. They tell the women, yes, you were brave by doing so. And it's also rewarding to the women, and lots of them experience something like a hormonal rush, this I did it feeling in the car. They get back into the car and they say, whoa, I did it. Hello, Mommy. Almost done.
Time's up.
Time's up, really?
No, sorry.
Time's up.
He's saying it is.
Just a quick note on media, because Daniela was referring how successful their media campaign was in Croatia. We sent our first press information in September, and I actually used the WHO statement on disrespect and abuse, and the media response was nothing. It was, no, that's not violence, no, it doesn't exist, of course, birth hurts, blah, blah, blah. I'm sure you've heard them all. But we had coverage in all 3 official midwifery magazines, which means that, as by law, each and every birth in Germany needs to be attended by a midwife. All midwives, if they read their magazines, knew what the roses were about, which I already considered a huge step forward. We had an article in the Huffington Post, and we had a series of 7 different articles on a very popular German birthing blog, Happy Birthday Deutschland. There were also 2 videos on YouTube explaining the event. and another blog video telling a traumatic birth story illustrating the need for the Roses Revolution. I need this one though. Yeah, no.
I'll hold that one.
Thank you. It's not working anymore though. Yes.
You have to point it at
The critical point of the Roses Revolution is that it is a one-way communication. It's the woman or the women speaking out, and the care providers may feel accused, but they don't have a means to respond. But that is actually missing the point that this Roses Revolution is not about them. This is for the women. This is a first, or not even a first step, but it's one of the first steps towards healing. Actually speaking face to face to somebody comes way later, way later. So it might be building up walls instead of opening up ways of understanding. In your countries, if you want to do the Roses Revolution, you might have to reconsider if it's helpful, if you want to give that voice to women, or if you feel that in your special situation, talking to stakeholders or something could be more effective. Just some stats for the 2014 Roses Revolution. In the real-life event, we had 42 different cities in Germany with roses put down, which we knew of. There might be more. 58 hospitals. We have approximately 750 hospitals with labor and delivery ward in Germany. 1 birth center got a rose, and 1 midwife's practice. The Facebook event had over 2,000 likes with only 1,300 new ones between November 24th and November 25th, so within 24 hours. We had a reach of over 100,000 users and an engagement of over 17,000 interactions and 1,800 comments, which, yes, we actually controlled each and every single one of them. But there were only 2 comments which we had to delete for disrespectfulness. We were very surprised by how respectful the comments were. And we had over 1,000 shares of photos and birth stories. Again, this year we didn't ask for people to send their stories in, but they came in, loads and loads. Some of them didn't want to be published, they just wanted to have them, read by somebody, but they didn't want to have them posted. But we posted 33 birth stories told by women, 1 told by a father, 1 told by a midwifery student who quit the training, 1 told by an obstetrician, 1 told by a woman who was unable to conceive and suffered from obstetric violence even before having a baby. 2 stories about not yet being able to put the rose down, of women, sitting in the car, shivering. I cannot do this year, but I will try again next year. 1 angry letter, which was a letter ranting about the state of childbirth and disrespectful care in general. And 1 call for letters from somebody who is working with traumatized women, encouraging women to participate. The Roses Revolution Germany sparked off 3 new countries, so people contacted us and asked, how do I do this in my country? And those are Roses Revolution Hungary, which is actually run by a German expat, Roses Revolution Austria, and Roses Revolution Switzerland, so that by now 17 countries worldwide are participating. And to close, I find that this is really what sums it all up. This is a picture that a woman took at a hospital in Eisenach in eastern Germany. And this is part of the letter which she sent to her hospital. She tells her birth story, and then she ends, and despite all of this, I have chosen one of the most beautiful roses for you, because I don't want you to throw it away as you get angry over this letter. I want you to see and respect the beauty, just like you should see and respect every childbearing woman, because each woman is a rose. And I think this is actually what the Roses Revolution is all about, to regain dignity and to see the beauty and to communicate about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. See mothers in work. So our next speaker is Nicholas Rubashkin, who is an obstetrics and gynecologist in San Francisco, and also recently has been a visiting Fulbright researcher in Hungary. And you have to use this, yeah. I thought I did. Uh-oh. Okay. I don't see the... Hang on. No, I'll... Yeah. No. Please. Sorry about that. Perfect. Thank you. You can use the pointer. Yeah. And there you can use that.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Nick Rabashkin. I'm an American obstetrician, also Ukrainian and Hungarian descent, and I spent the last year with a research group in Budapest constructing a survey, which I'm here to tell you about today. But the story starts back in The Hague in 2012 at the first Human Rights in Childbirth conference, and that's where I've met some Hungarian colleagues who are here today who helped me get to Budapest. And then additionally at the next conference in Blankenberg, met more Hungarians, and we became collaborators and conspirators together in this research. And it's to demonstrate that great connections happen at these conferences, and I'm confident that you will be forming some relationships here that will endure and that will be productive together. Is there a way that I can see it up here on the... I have to look up here. Okay. All right. So the story starts in Budapest, which was where I first heard about the case of Agnes Garab and then Anna Tarnowski. And I think this was a court case that inspired many of us. And ultimately the Tarnowski decision and this, like as we heard in the introductions today, kind of coalescing around really this one powerful affirmation of women's rights in childbirth, being able to choose the circumstances of childbirth. And while in the Tarnowski ruling specifically dealt with home birth and was initially my interest to go to Hungary and do research related to home birth, I began soon to see the connections across many different arenas of childbirth. And around the same time, the White Ribbon Alliance published their Universal Rights of Childbearing Women, which I think for many of us gave voice to really the entire, all of the issues, the scope of issues involved facing women from a human rights perspective in childbirth. But at the same time, while this was powerful, I think it became very kind of confusing. There are now many more issues to look at their relationships, and from a research perspective, there did not exist standardized definitions about these categories of abuse, let alone how to translate these and adapt these into Hungarian. Also, there currently does not exist any models how these rights abuses interrelate, whether in certain situations some of them have greater importance over others. So we had quite a task to decide how to tackle the current childbirth landscape in Hungary, which at times felt overwhelming when you think about these 7 issues, and some would say that there are even more issues perhaps involved not discussed in the White Ribbon Alliance. We multiply that by the number of women times the number of doctors and healthcare systems, and also then times the number of court systems, and it can feel like an infinity of problems. And also, I believe that we all feel a great sense of urgency, that we want these problems solved tomorrow. And of course, there is very little money to do this. So what to do? We struggled with the focus of our survey because we felt this infinity of problems. So what we decided to do, and I think that many of us are at this same stage, we decided to be explorers. And really, we're all at the beginning of, at the edge of this discovery. So we took an exploratory approach and decided to ask women what they thought the problems were. So we developed what we called the Mother-Centered Pregnancy Care Survey. And in it, we explore women's preferences, satisfaction, and priorities in birth care in Hungary, particularly, and we look at all the different levels, prenatal, birth, and immediately postpartum, mostly kind of what happens in the hospital immediately postpartum. And we adapted the survey to encompass many of the themes that we're talking about here, including cash payments, different approaches to informed consent, and also specific aspects of the way that pregnancy is medicalized in Hungary. So we heavily relied on pre-existing surveys to adapt our questions, particularly the Listening to Mothers survey, which has been used in the United States for now 3 times. And all of the questions for Listening to Mothers are available for researchers on the internet. So if some of you are thinking about doing surveys of your own, these are really well-tested survey questions that we had an easy time translating. So Listening to Mothers might be summed up in that it asked women what happened to you, and a more recent survey done in Canada and British Columbia that we also collaborated with builds on Listening to Mothers, but additionally asks women what was important to you and what helped you. So we had a short timeline. It can be roughly broken up into this. If any of you are thinking about how much time it might take to develop a survey tool, we knew we had a short, about 9 months, so we broke that up about evenly. The first 3 months we developed the survey. We assembled a team of experts, many of whom are in this room, but the expert team involved all of the disciplines that you can imagine would be important in childbirth, all the clinical, psychological, and legal and ethical aspects. We first assembled a 172 question survey. It was quite long, and we sent that to our group of experts for them to validate the content. And after that, we discarded a number of questions and ended up with a little over 120 questions that then took 3 months to translate. And some of you, we took a more rigorous approach to the translation with 5 different translators, so that, again, we're thinking about the process of publishing this research in journals, and that was what was recommended to us. Some of you may choose to take a less rigorous approach to translation. It was quite time-consuming to do 5 translators. We also debated last summer about whether and how to hire a survey firm, because we knew that if we marketed our survey to within our networks, of these birth activist networks that we all work in, that we were worried we might get a skewed sample of people who mostly agree with us. And we thought that for external review of our research and to increase the reception of our results, we should hire a survey firm which might be seen as more of a neutral party. So we fundraised to hire the survey firm. After that, we marketed and launched our survey, and the survey firm actually did help us get 600 completed surveys. The other half of our sample came from birth activist networks, and we had a response rate of 45% and a total cost of about $2.80 a survey, which actually is pretty good compared to our other survey firms we researched. So the survey is divided into these sections. It takes about 30 minutes to complete. So we asked women who took care of you. This was a surprisingly difficult question, because in order to adapt Listening to Mothers to the social insurance, socialized system of healthcare in Hungary, we had to develop totally new provider categories, which I'll get to. That was quite a challenge. That was the most time-consuming aspect of our translation process. We also asked women about the content of their care. We asked the women about informed consent, which was another area of adaptation of the survey, because as you've heard in the previous stories, there are times when women are asked their permission and then they reject this. They have no power of informed refusal, and the procedure is done against their will. That, in the surveys we relied on, had not been asked in that way to capture the against your will aspect. So we asked about cash payments, which I'll tell you about later today, but is something particular to many Central and Eastern European countries. We asked women about a series of like 20 preferences about what was important to you in your birth care. We also had some respectful maternity themes, and we asked 2 open-ended questions. So this is just to show you that our initial suspicions that if we only relied on our birth activist networks to supply us completed surveys, that we would only have obtained a skewed sample. So what you see here is that the online is kind of the birth activist marketing, and the far to the left, Ipsos is the survey firm that happened to us. So you can see that the birth activist groups really centered around the capital, Budapest, and is skewed toward a group with higher education and also higher incomes, whereas the survey firm did give us a wider spread demographically of people in the country. So we have our task to kind of really look at two very different populations. What's interesting also is these groups differed radically in their birth outcomes. So the more educated, wealthier women in Budapest had lower rates of nearly every intervention. So they had lower cesarean section rate, 23% versus 41%. Also increased rates, therefore, of vaginal delivery, but everything was lower. Decreased induction, decreased epidural, and birthing positions that more facilitate physiologic birth. So a challenge for us in the analysis is to think about how this population in Budapest, which leans toward Budapest, may not be representative of a certain group of women, but what are the factors in that group that facilitated them having perhaps care that aligned with their values. We asked an open-ended question, what was the best thing and what was the worst thing about your birth? And these were some of the responses we got, which I think many of you will recognize already in themes shared earlier. I'm going to go a little faster. So this is what our data is starting to look like, and we're going to present these graphs, assemble these graphs similar to this, which is just the raw data of our study, and presented in a report to the public later this year. But what you can see, we asked women, who was your most important prenatal care provider? And this graph really captures both the state system that exists in Hungary, but also a significant cash system that runs in parallel. So the chosen doctor side, which is the most common way that women in our sample said they were receiving prenatal care, these signify cash exchanges that are happening unofficially. The bar in the middle, the 223, is the state doctor traditional system. The 106 is hospital midwives providing prenatal care, and the 85 is home birth midwives. So our survey actually did capture some of the new legal home birth happening in Hungary, and again, in our analysis, we're going to be seeing how we can use that as a point of comparison. This is an example of how we asked women about preferences. So this question was, how important was it for you to have the choice between home and hospital? And we asked this of all women, not just those delivering at home. I think what's interesting is that the people who had a chosen doctor, which are kind of these three here, all rated of increasing importance that they thought it was increasingly important to have that choice, even though they decided to have a doctor and to have it in a hospital. So whether there's something about this way that women are choosing their providers, that they also generally value choice, that's something for us to look at in terms of women's values and preferences. What's interesting is the women who opted for the state option maybe had less emphasis on choice. Again, these are just kind of preliminary thoughts that we have to work out in our models. And not surprisingly here, this is the home birth midwife group. They felt most strongly that they should have the choice. This will be one of our main outcome measures. We asked women, how satisfied were you with your ability to make decisions about your care, both prenatally, at birth, and postpartum? So generally, I would say the trend is like this, that there were people on the extremes, people who were with a low in the middle. So people did not feel very neutral about this question. They were either very satisfied or not satisfied. So we're going to look at what are the factors that made people feel positive or made people feel negative. So ultimately, I think that from a human rights perspective, we're building a statistical model that looks something like this, with autonomy at the center, particularly relying on things that facilitate decision making, with the other things looking at whether and how they influence that. And we had less space in this survey, and I think for future surveys, as we discuss maybe spreading this model, is how to integrate some more of the particular aspects of violence and care that happen in the region, because that was not accounted in the established surveys. So I just wanted to end here with a quote from Agnes. I think many of us are thinking about her today, that the freedom in a country can be measured by the freedom for birth. And at Human Rights in Childbirth, we've seen that also happening in the United States, and we're taking this message around the world, soon in South Africa in July, and next January in India. So I look forward to meeting and talking with many of you over the next 2 days. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next speaker is Zalka Triklin, a researcher from Slovenia. And Zalka earned her PhD in women's studies and feminist theory, and is also a consultant for birth trauma. Thank you. And just give me a minute to... Zalka. That one. Thank you. Okay. You can use that.
Well, I'm very pleased to be here because I can put myself completely in what I'm doing. I work at the Institute of Public Health, and you can imagine how to be a birth activist in the non-governmental organization and to work on both, or even maybe on three sides to feel like a whole woman. It's not very easy, and in such a group of women and people, it's maybe a little bit relaxing for me to present my work as the basic part of my life. So, welcome to Slovenia. We will talk about how to research contemporary birth practices with women in the focus, because this is what is important. Maybe you know the beauty of Slovenia. Welcome to be here in Slovenia, but maybe you are not really at the best part of the world to give the birth of your baby. It's not really like big country. In our country, it's like 2 million people, and per year we have like 21,000 newborn babies, and this is not really a lot of them. And we have, on the first glance, very good perinatal data. You can see the perinatal mortality is the best in Europe. If we are looking on the data about the babies weighted more than 1,000 grams. So we have really good, and we are very pleased about such a data. And even maternal mortality, it's not really a big issue. And we have really good work on this data. We have a special expert group in Slovenia to active search for maternal deaths connected to childbirth, or to this period of pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. So those numbers are really exact numbers. So maybe just some data about every age of the mother, first baby. It's around 29 years old. Mother is not so young, and we don't have really big issue with teenage pregnancy. Maybe in other countries you have. But of course, what about experiences of women in Slovenia? Because of my position, so to be employed by the Institute of Public Health, I could manage to push on the national survey 10 years ago about maternity hospitals in Slovenia. We didn't speak about other places because at that time we didn't have any other places to give birth officially. Well, it was a survey about women experiences with maternity care, pregnancies, birth, and postpartum care until 1 year of the baby. and this was really the first national survey in Slovenia from this perspective. I have to inform you that in Slovenia we have really good perinatal information system, official system, in which the specific data about childbirth are collected. And of course, it's very important for Slovenian health practitioners to have it, because from my perspective, I can compare their data and the data from such survey and to establish if they are really comparable or if there are some misunderstanding between them or among them. And we use two ways to collect data. We really developed huge questionnaire. I can show you, it was like that, like in the booklet, 131 questions, different type of questions. And of course, we have to find a way to distribute it for distribution, and it was really big challenge for us, because finally we have to choose to distribute them through maternity hospitals. And at the one point, there was a big resistance, because the people who read that questionnaire before they gave to the mothers, they read such question as, did they perform episiotomy? And if the answer was yes, did they ask you before this? And they said, no, you can't ask such questions. Are you crazy? And we have really big challenge to across this with few help of some dedicated medical professionals. I have to say that in our group, research group, we were like people from sociology. I declare myself as humanist, feminist. We have one medical doctor and one midwife from the health faculty. And that was it. So, but these questionnaires was just the beginning of our methodology. We wanted to really focus on women's stories, and we asked women to declare if they wanted to be in that group. We will ask them at home about their birth experience, and we got a lot of yes, I want to be in your group. Please come to me, come to my home, and I will tell you all about. We did a little bit around more than 25 interviews, deep semi-structured interviews. Transcriptions were more than 700 pages of the stories, and it was exceptional. And at that point, we tried to put the data from the questionnaires in such a scheme. You can see here, 2005, we have very medicalized birth in Slovenia. You can see like episiotomies, more than half of women have an episiotomy. And we compare some of this data with official data from perinatal health system, and yes, the data was really close to each other. And then we asked ourselves what we can do. And first, we organized first international conference about birth in health faculty in Ljubljana, with a lot of support of midwifery department there, and it's only midwifery department in Slovenia, with international contribution, and the media coverage was quite good, and there was a lot of not very kind questions for doctors who were attending that conference. So we started some kind of movement with, not just within women, but even within health professionals. And in 2007, we managed to publish such a book in red called Birth Machinery. And I have to fight really hard to have this title, because I said, this is what is going on. It's machinery, and we don't want to be still in such way in Slovenia. You can see the some titles of different international and national contributors, and we talk about the evolution to women-centered maternity care, because I don't really believe in revolution. So we talk about midwifery in Europe. We talk about how and why to research the experience of childbirth, because they asked me, why do you want to know about women experiences? We talk about expectant mothers in Slovenia. Are they, because we found that they really are quite satisfied, because they just at that time they just started to ask themselves, is this really all that we need? And I wanted to speak about different kind of abuse in childbirth. And this is my contribution. I wanted that every woman
už se
in the
nemusíte
country
ničeho bát.
could hear
Tady se nám
happy
položte, my se vás
birthday
jenom
to you,
zkontrolujeme,
mother.
přeměříme.
And
Co zase si chtěl vyčůrat?
you
Tak snad
right
nám tady
to
nebudete čurat bez stoje.
non-violence,
Takhle já se ale nevyčurám. Nechte na nás. Vy si
birth
klidně
care
ležte a dýchejte.
and
Kdy jste se narodil?
postpartum
Kdy jste se narodil?
and
Čuráte
your
dneska
baby and
poprvé?
your family.
Ne.
A jak dlouho čůráte?
Já bych se vyčural
You
sám,
can see
kdyby
that
byly nějaké
we started to something for women to know with different kind of approaches. So the book is one thing, the conference is one thing, and our society, non-governmental society, natural beginning society, known as Mama Zofatu, go on with the work on these data. And you can see maternity care in Slovenia in 2010. We have 14 maternity hospitals, no freestanding birth center, no professional help in the public healthcare system for planned home birth, no autonomous midwifery practice, and medical paradigm is still dominant among doctors and among midwives too. And the midwifery department at health faculty in Ljubljana is slowly developing midwifery paradigm, and there is a big problem with the practice of the students. They go through maybe advanced theory of midwifery, but then face abuses when they have to practice their skills to become really experts in midwifery. You can see that maternity care is divided among different professionals during pregnancy, labor and birth and postpartum. Women don't know midwife before birth, and one midwife is responsible for 2, 3, 4 births, women during birth. Doctors formally or informally control midwives, and there are often limitations of companion to one. No children are allowed to birthing rooms. And have had around episiotomy around 8%. And there are some changes on institutional, organizational, and personal levels. Of course, all of this is connected with autonomy of the women and, of course, with the autonomy of the midwives. So we are working hard on different levels. At the Institute, I face really big problems to go on with our teams. But at the non-governmental organization, we have new projects. Project Hug Me Gently. It's about the rights of women, babies, and fathers or other family members in the hours after birth, skin to skin, and not just skin to skin contact. And we did such a nappy with our son. It's very popular. You can get it as a pregnant woman, and you can go with such a nappy in the hospital and say, I'm aware about what my baby will need, and I'm aware about my needs after the birth. Please don't interfere if it's not really medically necessary. I need privacy, and the privacy in the hospital, it's really complicated theme. For a non-governmental organization, this is not really easy time to put such ideas forward, because they are at the hospital, they are very reserved to our actions. But we support in this project students of midwifery, because we understood they are the really those puppies of those roses we saw before, and I have I have a support groups of midwifery running students. So we run together every Monday and talk about their problems, joys, love stories, and so on, to really put the some different bases for their future job today. So. Thank you very much. And as our Slovenian folk song says, well, the sun is gonna shine on my little heart. So, thank you for your attention, your commitment, and your wisdom.
Thank you, Salka. So our next speaker is Zuzana Kriškova, chairwoman of Women's Circle in Slovakia. Sorry, no. Yes, this is Janka Debreceniova. They changed, so thank you.
Thank you. Welcome to Slovakia. The advantage of this conference is that you can just switch the names of the countries without significantly changing the content. Although there is some local folklore, as we could have seen right now.
Sorry, can you help me? Which one is your?
It's here, Janka D.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So I'll start talking about more or less the same things that have been tackled in a bit different manner, and I'm very grateful for this opportunity to share our methodological approaches, because I think it's really inspiring, and I think this is really what we needed, and it's another sign of the solidarity and cooperation between us, which is so essential. So thank you for this. How do I?
Just press
okay. Women, Mothers, and Bodies is the name of our book. That's just where we are just completing our editing work, and that just goes to print in a few days. Where we together with another NGO, women's rights NGOs and women's birth rights NGOs put together. My name is Janka Debreceniova, and I'm a lawyer, or now, after more than 10 years of very intensive cooperation with people of different professions from mainly social science field, I would dare to call myself a social scientist. And we are an NGO based in Bratislava, existing since 1992, and we started as a general human rights NGO right after the fall of the Iron Curtain, and then we moved the focus mainly to the human rights of women, including a very heavy emphasis on reproductive rights. And we do a lot of advocacy work, we do strategic litigation, and we do many other things, including training and publications and education of the public. Our cooperation with women's circles, which Susanna will present, but I cannot omit saying a few words about it at the beginning. Susanna called me more than 2 years ago and started talking about the bill that just been released by the government that wants to force women who undergo birth at home, which is not regulated, so the state does not provide any healthcare assistance in home birth, that they want to make sure that it's the woman who gave the birth, so a woman who would undergo such a birth would have to go undergo a medical examination, a gynecological examination, in order to confirm that she is the mother of the child, which is totally stupid. And when Susanna told me this, the end of the period for public commenting of the bill was tomorrow morning. So I spent the whole night in the office drafting the public comments. But the bill was so stupid that even the members of all governmental departments in the government voted with us when we had the governmental council, which is a governmental advisory body. And after we won the dispute proceedings at the ministry, and we were sitting in a pub after that, I said to Susanna, okay, we know what's happening, this is over. We know that the main problem is violence in childbirth facilities, which is the only place where women can give birth while attended by medical professionals. But the trouble is that we do not have solid data we can rely on, and we would be contested all the time. Who you are to tell us? You women, from you lawyers or you sociologists or you activists who don't even have medical education, who you are to tell us? So we decided that we need to collect data. So this is how it all started, and now I will very briefly go through what we have been doing for more than 2 years, and this book is just a partial result of our work, which is ongoing and being processed. The discourse in Slovakia, like in many other countries in the region, is highly risk-based, and it's of course determined by male doctors, by the stars of the field of gynecology and obstetrics, with female doctors of course being part of the system, with the midwives also being part of the system, but not being able to assist birth independently, neither at homes nor in hospitals. So this is the background how we started. We put together a team of women's rights and human rights knowledgeable social scientists, but in cooperation with medical and healthcare specialists, including some who are sitting also here at this conference. And we were trying to put together a concept of a very complex monitoring and research that we undertook in order to document and evidence the violations. From the very beginning, it was first very clear to us that we want a human rights focused research and monitoring. So we already had this perspective integrated from the very beginning of our work. And the second thing was that we wanted women to talk first about what's happening in the hospitals. That was a very important first perspective for us. And third, the other underlying concept and underpinning thing was that it's the state which has the main responsibility for providing the right to health and all other rights, and that the hospitals are just the extended hand of the state, providing the state obligations which comprise the duty to respect, protect, and fulfill the rights with all it means, including monitoring and research and effective remedies of violations if they happen at all. So these were the three very important departure points for us, from which we developed our methodology further. And I think this facility-based childbirth is a very important perspective, also from the point of view of the state being the main agent and me being the main uh, subject, having the main obligations, that all other issues connected to childbirth should be seen in, no matter whether we talk about home birth, whether we talk about cesareans. We can simply never omit the perspective of custody-based childbirth. And of course, this is very relevant in the context of reproductive rights as such. And I'm very grateful to Stefania, who framed it so well, in my opinion, at the very beginning of in the keynote speech. So we used a combination of various methods. But before we started splitting up the monitoring and research into the methodological sections, I would say, we identified key areas which we want to focus on. And we identified using the human rights perspectives and the rights which have already been mentioned, including the right to dignity, which was the main departure point, the right to privacy, the right to intimacy, autonomy, right to health, the right not to be subject to cruel, degrading treatment and to torture, and all other possible rights. We developed a set of questions that were important in this perspective and connected to childbirth, such as guaranteeing the right to privacy, intimacy, the accompanying person, informed consent, sufficient information that were important for the woman, episiotomies, care with consent, no crystallar maneuver, and so on and so forth. And we started with in-depth interviews where we invented a scenario where we put all these questions into a sequence of into a sequence of questions in an interview that was both descriptive by the women concerned and also evaluated. So they were also evaluating their birth experience. So this was a part we conducted 15 in-depth interviews with women who gave vaginal birth in the last 3 years and who were describing this experience in their own words, which we then processed further through the lens of this human rights perspective. What we did then, realizing, and that was also emerging in the interviews very heavily, by the way, all the methodological tools that we used, all the scenarios, all the letters, requests for information I'll talk about further, we translated them and we will put them onto the website. The link follows on one of the other slides, so you can just look at them for inspirations if you feel like that. What we noticed and what we knew actually before was that one of the problems and violations women were describing in the interviews was an absolute lack of information during the process of childbirth after they came to hospital. So one of the things we really started focusing on heavily was framing the issue of the access to information and right to informed consent also in terms of the right to choose the provider. Because consenting to care implies that you, in the first and foremost, have to agree with the provider. But the question is, how can you choose the provider if you can't get any information from the provider? So we started through a very complex monitoring, finding out how we can find out whether and how and to what extent it is possible for women to find out information about their birth from their potential providers. So we basically made a list of all the hospitals in Slovakia, and then we found women who wrote to each and every of the hospitals letters that we prepared for them, like birth plans, actually asking the hospital for their response and telling them whether or not this wish is possible to be met by the staff, and if not, why. And this was basically more or less the same set of issues as was being followed in the interviews, just framed differently into the language of wishes. And in the same way, we proceeded with other methodological tools that we used through the lens of these questions and also a few more. We looked at all the websites of all the maternity wards in Slovakia, trying to find out what are the issues the maternity wards inform the public about on their websites, which is the first thing you do in this, not of course by all in segments of society, especially the most vulnerable ones, but in general, this is one of the most accessible ways to find out. The other method that we used was writing official requests for information to the hospitals. What we found out, and we really spent ages with this because it was extremely complicated, that depending on the ownership structures, there were some hospitals who were obliged officially, pursuant to law, to respond to these questions, and there were some who weren't obliged officially. But we nevertheless sent letters to all, asking those who were not officially obliged to please give us the answers, because we are generally monitoring how women's rights are observed in the country. And then the cherry on the cake was an official request for information to the Ministry of Health, being the main responsible governmental body for the agenda of human rights of women in childbirth. And we basically asked them whether they have this information on what's happening in the hospitals, on the practices, on the issues, on the same issues again, but just framed a bit differently, whether they have it at their disposal or not. And this is what we found out. I'll not go through the findings from the interviews with women in detail, because it's basically what has been said here, just with the local flavors, basically. But I'll just say a few things about what we found out. The first thing was there is an absolute lack of understanding by the doctors concerned and by the hospital staff in general of the concept of informed consent. Basically, every woman that came into the hospital was given a form, an informed consent form, which she was obliged to sign, which was often happening while the women were having contractions or other painful experiences they were supposed to focus on. Even the hospitals who responded to the request for information, which I'll be talking about a bit later, almost all of those who responded reported, apart from 3, I think, reported that yes, we have this form and this is how we are obtaining informed consent from the women concerned. And this was really reflected in almost all aspects of the care, that there is an absolute lack of understanding, and not only of the concept of informed consent, but of the concept of rights and of human rights and of human rights of women in general. The second thing was, of course, extreme lack of privacy, not only caused by the spatial arrangement, but also by the behavioral aspects of the experience in the hospital. And of course, this was very closely connected to non-dignified care in all forms you can only imagine, from the staff non-introducing themselves, which was a frequent practice when coming, like too many people, crowded room full of students and whomever else you can imagine, through humiliating the women, debasing all you can imagine that was there and that was happening. Calling women mummies was very frequent, which brings us to an extreme stereotypical perceptions of the women, not including the objectification of the women, really treating them like objects, like bodies, simply. That's why the name of the book, talking about them in front of them without talking to them. These were like very frequent practices that appeared in what we found out. Another thing was extreme rate of physical violence and abuse. And I would even dare to say torture and degrading treatment. And the other thing which was very significant was extreme normalization of the practices, including by the women themselves, which I would be very cautious to interpret, because this might couldn't interpret the reason for the normalization. Part of it might be probably some degree of coping with the trauma. So it's very hard to go into this, since we did not have the data to analyze this. But there was, even in connection with practices such as lack of privacy in the spatial arrangements, what the women were saying, well, yes, that's just hospitals, we can't do anything about this. I wasn't, my time is up, so I'll just very briefly say that the good thing was that we had and have a great support from the local WHO office, because what we found in the interviews really collided with all possible guidelines and recommended practices by professional organizations. And I'll very briefly say what we found out from the monitoring of the websites and after writing the letters. The interesting thing was that when we have 54 maternity wards in Slovakia, and when women wrote letters like as women, as woman A, B, A, C, A, D, out of the 54, only 17 got answers. Out of these 17, 12 were containing either very vague or very brief answers. Like we saw answers like yes, no, no, or we had an answer no, 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 without any explanation from a hospital. And these were those who responded. So this was a complete disaster. Then when we came to the hospital websites, we found out that, for example, out of the 50, they were user-friendly. They just did not contain any information that women might need prior to giving birth. Only 3 of them contained information on what's happening during childbirth. Very few had information on the interventions or practices. What was interesting, and we realized in the train yesterday, that when the information was somehow connected to hospitals benefiting from financially, then the numbers multiplied. Like suddenly there was 26, 27, 30 informing on accompanying person, because it's a paid service. So this was a very interesting finding in the website. But otherwise, it was a disaster. Requests for information. Out of those who were obliged to respond, almost all responses, we got 25 responses altogether. 17 of them were those who were obliged to respond. Only 7 of those who weren't obliged to responded. And it was basically revealing, and Zuzana will talk about it more in the context of violence, that there were really huge discrepancies between what the women were saying was happening in the hospitals and what the hospitals' managements were saying what was happening there. And the last thing, what we got from the ministry was a top disaster of the whole research, because it was basically saying, we don't coordinate any such research, and we have no such data. We are sorry, you should go to professional organizations or to the particular hospitals, which is very clearly indicating that what's happening in the maternity wards is happening with the states, if not explicit, then silent consent, which is very, very alarming. We'll continue with the work. We are just in the process of final proofreading of our English summary. So thank you, Nick. Now you can't escape. And we'll hang these questionnaire forms, these scenario forms, and everything, the executive summary onto the website for your inspiration. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. So now our next speaker is Zuzana Krišková from Slovakia. And just, if you see Krišková, yeah, perfect. And you can use I'll just have to plug it.
How are you?
It's just with the arrows.
Okay. So I will also thank for this amazing opportunity to be here. And I remember in November in Prague, I was sitting with Daniela during some lunch, and we were talking about we should do something. And I think there was this idea of this conference, at least I think was there. And I'm very happy it's happening. So, as you already heard, we Women's Circles cooperated very closely with Občan demokracie and zodpovědnost, which is Citizen Democracy and Accountability in English, and Janka Debrecenova. And yes, it started all by one phone call. I have to say, I never met Janka before this phone call. I got the... Oh, sorry, okay. I got the number from someone else, and it started like this. So we are a grassroots organization, we are volunteer-based, and we are very passionate about it. So in this presentation, I will go a little bit back for theory about physical abuse. Then I will talk about monitoring findings with regard to physical abuse, and there is some conclusion. So it was mentioned here already, the Wide Ribbon Alliance did a great work in framing the rights of women. So, but our need was a little bit the physical abuse to make some subcategories. Because if you say physical abuse to someone you ever met, they say, oh, that's someone when you are attacked. How can you say that in maternity wards there is some kind of attack? What are these women? They are slapping, they are beating? Yes, this is what we call obvious physical abuse. And for some women, especially for minorities, this may be also true. But in our research, because we were focusing mostly on or the women from our research were from middle class and have higher education, we didn't find this kind of abuse. However, we did find harmful medical practices and unjustified medical interventions. What is the difference between these two? Some harmful medical practices, these are obsolete practices or non-evidence-based practices. And I will show it on two examples, which one is this crystal expression or crystal maneuver or fundal pressure or pressure on the fundus. However you will brand it, it is still the same practice. This is a picture from Stop the Crystal campaign that was done in Spain, I think. And also we will talk about suturing of perineal tears without pain relief. And the next is unjustified medical interventions. And the best descriptions, I think, is one that Nick gave me. This is from Nicholas Rubashkin. And some medical treatment can enhance health, but when a procedure is done without good reason and without informed consent, it becomes a form of physical abuse. There is on this graph, you can see the percentage of episiotomies of vaginal birth in Slovak hospitals from 2011. The red line indicates the rate that is recommended by WHO, as some we should see, then it is 10%, Denmark has even lower, and the Zalka showed us that some hospitals have 8%. So you can see this, some are skyrocketing, 95%. So we cannot say if the episiotomy, just if women say, I had an episiotomy, we cannot say this was a form of physical abuse, as we could say if it was about slapping or beating. But if you look at this data, we can clearly see that episiotomy is overused. So there are many, many episiotomies that are done without good reason. That's why we call them a form of physical abuse, if they are done without consent and without good reason. So going through our findings, I will start with the crystal expression or fundal pressure. As Janka already explained, we asked hospitals about this practice. We did not call it crystal expression in the letters because we know they are saying, oh, there are these crystal and we are doing this evidence-based fundal pressure. We asked, is there any situation in childbirth if you are pushing a woman's belly? So 25 out of 54 hospitals replied, and 5 said no. It was a very short answer. It was no. And some others said yes, exceptionally, if the birthing woman is not cooperating and the child life is in danger. One said, see our website. And one said yes if it is lege artis. Lege artis is a term that is used in Slovakia, meaning it is based on the scientific data. As you probably many of you know, Crystal has no scientific data that would support it as a safe practice. And 29 out of 44 hospitals didn't even bother to answer, so we don't know what their attitudes is or are. From interview with women, we did these interviews with 15 women. These women we found, first we did a questionnaire about suturing, and we asked women if they are willing to cooperate with us further for some deeper interviews. They said yes, and we asked also how, some of them said yes, and we asked them also about how the healthcare person was treating them. And from this, we choose not only the women that gave birth vaginally during the last 3 years, but we were focused on neutral and slightly negative experiences. We are not looking for extreme negative experiences because we want to have some kind of pilot study. What is the general experience of birthing women? And we found out, according to Crystal, that it is done without consent and prior communication as a routine procedure. And these 15 women gave birth in area of Bratislava and Trnava, which are Slovak cities, and which is very interesting. Hospitals that are from this area, those 5 hospitals that said, no, we are not doing this, are the same hospital that these women gave birth. So there is a direct contrast between the experiences of those women and the official attitude from those hospitals. This is from the interviews, from the interview number 12. And somewhere in the process of pushing, when I was not pushing enough, so the big Mrs. Nurse said, so I will push on your belly. Of course, that what I was afraid of. So I said, no, oh God, please do not do this. So the nurse shouted at me and felt insulted. She says she's not doing it for herself. She has done it 3 times today and she doesn't need it. And so somehow they talked me into it. So I said, all right, push on my belly. And this was probably the worst part of the birth because it hurt terribly, terribly. And it was not going well even when she was pushing on the belly. She laid this way. The interview indicates how the nurse was pushing on her belly. Totally, she was going over me with her hand and everything. And when the birth was not going, she brought a little stool and she stood on it and she laid into my belly from that stool. And I did not know anymore what to do. Really, that was terrible. So as you can see from that indicates this interview, it is done as routine practice without any much more explanation of the risks. And this is very bad experience from this for this woman. The next, we were focusing on episiotomy and current consent on routine episiotomy is, and I would quote Figo, that routine episiotomy is harmful and should be avoided. So we asked the hospitals if they do episiotomy as a standard procedure. They refused that this episiotomy is doing a standard. It depends on doctor decision or it depends on actual birth course. Only 5 actually said, yes, this is standard procedure and we do it mostly for the first-time mothers. And the 29 didn't answer. So where are we with episiotomy in 2012? So the average episiotomy rate in Slovakia for vaginal birth is 65%. The highest rate in some hospitals, is 95%. And in the lowest, if woman is giving birth in the hospital with lowest rate of episiotomy, it still is every 3rd woman is cut. So this indicates that this is a standard procedure for women, so for healthcare person doing on women. It's overused, and the attitude of the hospitals, again, are in contrast with the official data. These are official data from our professional bodies. So what did women see? What did women say in the interviews? What did we find? We find several violations of informed consent, that episiotomy was done without consent or against consent. For example, if women said, I don't want episiotomy, then we see it as against consent, and if it was without even asking her, it was without consent. In some cases, women were asked to consent, and in some cases they were told it is necessary to perform an episiotomy. From the interview number 5, I could not push the baby out, so they insisted on episiotomy. So I said no, but when for a third time she started to tell me that the baby will have conical head and that we have to pull him out with forceps or pump. And so they started to scare me. So I said, so by way of that, no, I would rather do the episiotomy. As you can see, this consent was given by a scared woman. She was not giving it as a free consent. After the episiotomy, of course, they're going a suturing of the episiotomy or other laceration or tears. As I said before, we were doing the questionnaire, and the questionnaire has almost 2,000 experiences of women, and over 40% of these women describe their experience as painful or extremely painful. We asked hospitals how do they, if there is any such circumstances, if they are suturing women without use of pain relief. From those who replied, they said, no, there are no such circumstances. 3 accepted the possibility, but said, but only if it is requested as woman. So they stated the standard practice is always suture women with pain relief, which of course makes sense. But again, what are the women saying? We found there was a differing approach from medical personnel, including non-empathic reactions or ignoring of women's complaints. So if women were complaining, it hurts, there was no response. For some women, this was the most painful part of birth. And generally speaking, women felt that they don't have enough information about their tearing, how many stitches are needed, or what should they expect in healing. From interview number 8, and later they sutured me for a long time. My husband came to me, he was holding my hand, but this was probably the worst pain from all of it. And they told me nothing, how many stitches, nothing, how long they will suture me. And it hurt awfully. That was awkward, and there were 2 female doctors, one was teaching the other. So, my conclusion, what I can say, violation of women's rights, physical abuse is exercised as routine practice and highly normalized. Authorities' attitudes are in direct contrast on women's experiences, and also I would add with the statistic data. In my opinion, we can no longer be blind to these facts. Institutional and harmful practices do not only result from individual failures. Too many times we hear, oh, but we have a good doctors. Oh, he had a bad day or she had a bad day. So, no, this is a result of systemic problems. Therefore, systemic changes needs to be done. And as a first step, I see it as we, as a society, will stop accepting violation of human rights of women as a standard of care. And as already Janka said, our publication is processed, final, things are done, so you can find the summary and the methodological tools and more information about our work. And the last thing what I would say, because yes, there is the main obligations on state and those providers, but I also think it's in my heart what I believe, that every doctor, every midwife and every nurse, they are capable of kind and non-violent behavior. This is not something unique. Yeah, it can be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Susanna. And our last speaker in this panel is Natalia Sedlicka, midwife from Czech Republic. And just use this right hand.
Hello, thank you for inviting me. I'm very glad and honored that I can be here. And when I listen to all of these presentations and all of these efforts that have been done throughout Eastern Europe and Central Europe and so on, I'm gaining this hope that the changes are possible and that they can really become true if we really go into cooperation and if we communicate the challenges and troubles and get the strength together, because that's how we can gain the power and how we can move forward. So I'm really happy for hearing all of these speakers and all of your efforts. So thank you for doing that. My presentation is about another approach to childbirth care. I'm a midwife and a psychotherapist from Czech Republic, and I initiated a project called Jak jinak, which means another way in childbirth care. I initiated it about 1.5 years ago, and I would like to present what is the situation in Czech Republic and what are the challenges that we are facing and what is the project about. So first of all, a little bit about the situation. I'll try to be fast and and not to speak into details, so you don't have to think about going to lunch already. So what is the situation in Czech Republic? So it is, of course, much similar to other countries that we heard about already. The base of the system in Czech is it's based on secondary care, which I see as a big problem. There is no division of the care. We can see the post-totalitarian attitude and habits, and actually, and you can also see the repression. The totalitarian regime is still being set in the country, and we can see it in them and the institutional and governmental efforts to really tighten it up by midwives not getting autonomous licenses, by women being refused their rights and wishes. Some of the challenges is that there is a big lack of knowledge and actually a widespread biased knowledge about what actually is birth and what actually is a good birth practice, which we can of course see by the being a complex problem, historical, economical, political, social, and so on and so on. The tradition of midwifery itself was lost during the socialistic regime in Czech Republic. And what is my very important point, which I would like to say, that first we have to show there is a mistake. It has to be recognized first before we can start changing it. And I think that's one of the main problems in Czech healthcare system, that actually objectively it is not recognized that there is actually a problem, that there is not a well-established care, that the practices are actually biased and harmful and so on. So that's what I think is one of the big topics and issues that we have to start changing in order to really start moving forward. Sorry. So I would like to show the absurdity of the system that we're facing and the situation there is in Czech Republic. For instance, last June, there was a big ICM Congress, International Congress of International Confederation of Midwives, being held in Prague. I see many midwives here that had been there. And it had been really it had a really great publicity throughout the world. It was mainstreamed and how you say broadcasted in the present time throughout the world, and it was really a great event. There gathered 3,800 midwives from all over the world, and there were like from 126 countries had in their workshops, and it was really amazing action. And the absurdity of the Czech system is actually there was no medialization and any reflection of it in the Czech context. Although we tried to put it in the media, we tried to put it in newspapers and so on, and make the publicity happen. It really was quite hard, and it did not go through. And I'm asking why. How is this possible? In year 2015, when we have this great
globalization, we can see on internet everything in a minute and really get together with the whole world. How is this possible that in the context of the within one state we don't reflect this? Another example of this absurdity, for instance, is the verdict of Strasbourg court, which happened, and unfortunately we very much believe that it would be a big hope for us to really start moving forward and start implementing changes into the society. The verdict unfortunately was that no violation was had been done on the women that sued Czech Republic, but actually the verdict itself was not that negative. It was about that that really the Strasbourg court cannot really speak into the legislation and practices of each country, but the interpretation that came again in the Czech media and the Czech healthcare system and government and doctors and politicians was that there is no need for changes, that our care is the best, and there is not and that it's not necessary to really start doing any changes because we have one of the best perinatal mortalities, and therefore our care is the best, which is really absurd when you look at this was from the Strasbourg court actually. When you look at the map of options and possibilities and practices, and also freedom of home birth care being throughout the European Union or throughout Europe, you can see there is quite a line being somewhere where the Iron Curtain was. We belong, as a Czech Republic, unfortunately, to the eastern part of Europe in this, although we are in the central part. And here you can see the division. The blue and green places are where their home births are made possible, or the legislation is for it, and so on. And the primary care exists, and so on and so on. And the white part is actually where it is restricted, where options and possibilities are not at all. When you spoke about the Roses Revolution, it's another example. These activities, it came to our country too, and actually women went in front of the Ministry of Health and in front of hospitals and gave roses in there. And actually the only outcome that came out was that these few crazy hippies and natural women, which are really extreme, are trying to do something. So it is this absurdity of the system, but it is not just about choices and freedom and liberty and dignity, but it is also the malpractices, as you spoke about, which I'm really concerned of as a midwife and a psychotherapist. That's something that really sorry, I cannot look for the word. Something that makes importance that the malpractices is what is performed, at least in our country, on daily basis and routinely. So I see the very shifted vision of normality, and also that the changes are inevitable. That was also why we started this project called Another Way, and the aim of it is to achieve a systematic changes in birth options by introducing primary midwifery care based on the continual midwifery model of care. Of course, it's a big goal, especially in a country where only secondary care exists and doctors are leading actually 100% of births, and now other options exist. Other than this very medicalized birth in hospital, or a home birth being partly illegal, although in Czech women are allowed to give home birth, and a state should provide them with the care, but state doesn't do it. So women now keep writing to Ministry of Health and to hospitals that they want their midwives, but actually without much success. Either no response comes, or it comes after they give birth, or it comes with apology that unfortunately it is not possible to fulfill this wish.
So the vision of the project is to widen these options and services, not having only these two extremes, but bring the continual model and get the inspiration from the international e-beam practice and international guidelines. It is very complex. One of the part of the project is to really bring in the professionalization into the field. So we have a project manager, which is amazing. Concerned that we have no money for it. we created 10 pillars, and we are trying to bring in the proposal and the realization of the functional system of primary care, bring the cooperation and communication with other organizations. Of course, one of the big fields and pillars is the medialization, which I see as crucial, especially after the Strasbourg court, that you really have to bring in the objective information about what is a good care and what is good childbirth practice. Another is cooperation with insurance companies, and one of the big topics that we came to as a necessary is adequate involvement of men in the topic, since it's being taken for many years as a gender issue also. Sometimes being seen as women against doctors or these midwives against doctors, and so on and so on. We're trying to bring in and we're creating now a group of men who would support women and their children, because it is concern of all of us. Of course, education of midwives, I'll talk about it later, in cooperation with doctors. One of the big issues also is that of course, one of the things seeing is the post-totalitarian regime is that there are many birth traumas, as you spoke about, and that we have to face the society being actually overwhelmed by this big birth trauma. So creating a therapeutic group is also one of the issues. And of course, education. Actually, how it started, this project started, was by the big urge to really already bring in the functional birth houses. Although there had been attempts for many years to bring it, it never came into function. So to bring a network of birth houses, which was the first and primary idea. But of course, after this, all of these topics opened up, and we suddenly seen this big mountain, Himalayas, that we have to climb on to really make the changes happen. And that really the big snake, that you have to put really many parts and transform the whole system in order to really make the changes happening, because just by one part you cannot really make the changes. So 2 minutes, thank you. So just shortly what we have achieved. On the International Congress, we had interviews with 15 beautiful midwives from the international context, which we have some of them we have on our websites, and we're bringing them also in a further future part of the objectivization of the information, and a petition of the professionals, which was signed by 1,200 midwives from all over the world. We are bringing in communication and in cooperation many organizations, since in Czech Republic there are many organizations that are trying to improve maternity care for many years. But actually quite separately. So what we are trying to do and achieve is to really bring them together and start cooperating, so that the strength can really be higher or bigger. Another thing that we came with is a viral video, which I would like to show you. Maybe some of you seen it already. I might need a little help with So, yeah, the video. Oh, So the video actually came to us as an idea, which is not new, but we wanted to show how we treat birthing women on on a man, actually, on a man point of view, which when you look at it, you can see the absurdity of the whole situation. It has actually more than 100,000 views already. It's been put on YouTube. So if you'd like to support it, I'll give you a link after. And of course, the more it will spread, the better.
Tak jsme tady, už se nemusíte ničeho bát.
To je.
Tady se nám položte, my se vás jenom zkontrolujeme, přeměříme.
Co zase chci jenom vyčurat?
Tak snad nám tady nebudete čurat ve stoje.
Takhle já se ale nevyčurám.
To nechte na nás. Vy si klidně ležte a dýchejte.
Kdy jste se narodil?
Cože?
Kdy jste se narodil?
Čuráte dneska poprvé?
Ne.
A jak dlouho čuráte?
Já bych se vyčural sám, kdyby...
Byly nějaké komplikace dřív při močení, nebo vždy bez problémů?
Ne, vždycky bez komplikací.
Uvolněte se, dýchejte, ano.
Já myslím, že budeme připraveni a teď můžete.
No, takhle fakt ale nemůžu.
Čůrání je normální lidský proces, stejně jako porod. Jde to i jinak. www.jakinak.info
So actually, this was a famous Czech actor. So that's what we thought. It's necessary to really bring in the famous people and so that we can bring the information into the mainstream, into public, to really show there is really something wrong, because it's not too visible, and it's about spreading this information throughout the society. So this is the information leaflet, and another things that we accomplished last year. I'm almost done. Was a concert for Vincent, which was a case of a newborn who died 6 hours after home birth because he had a tumor throughout the whole belly. But actually, the woman was criminalized immediately after she called the ambulance that there's something wrong with the baby. Five police car came along with the ambulance, and actually instead of giving the woman a care that she really needed, they started really victimizing her, and so on and so on. So we made a concert for Vincent, which was name of the baby, called "Birth, Live and Die as Humans." We would like to make more of these concerts. There came about 400 people, and we really try to speak about that there is really failure of the system, and that it needs to be that something needs to be done with that this is not possible to really be treating women like this, and that something needs to happen. Another thing that we accomplished last year, and I'm finishing almost, is the Mobile Company Foundation has every year a competition from about 60 projects. They take 16 of them, and we went into the final, got into the last 10 of them, final 10 projects, where they are pay. If you win this, they pay a project manager paid by the mobile company for the whole year to work for the non-governmental organization for some project. And we, as a project, we asked for, and now we are. Because we won the card voted by people. Actually, 5,500 people voted for us, and so we are working with this professional to build two of our pillars to really create it. So we are now working on a 1-year study program for midwives to be really able to learn and work in physiology of childbirth and autonomy of the profession. So now we are building the program and also looking for international lecturers. We have already few, but of course, if there are any people here willing to help us, we would be very happy. And another thing, another part of this project is that we are creating a proposal of functional primary care system of care, which then we will, of course, be working with and go to government and work on the government level. So we hope that we will be able this way to really professionalize the field of midwifery and so on. for better tomorrows and for better future of all of us. So how to implement the changes? We have to look for the good examples. Thank you very much for attention.
Sorry about that, but they're waiting for us for lunch at the restaurant, and I'm just waiting for them to come and start waving. So we don't have time for questions, but I hope that you will sit together for lunch and pose any questions that you have. We're about a half an hour late right now, so if we're at 1 o'clock right now, we're going to start up again at 2. Please come back on time so that we can finish approximately. Have a good lunch. The restaurant is on the floor underneath.